Okay, and what about pregnant women when they go through physical and emotional changes? Do their family actually play a role in the 9 months that actually happen?
I think the outside is really inside. And everyone has a role to play.
But can you tell us a little more about the physical and the emotional changes that actually take place that could be termed as weak?
There's no such thing as weak. Any problem that happens in pregnancy which affects the quality of life, to give you an example.
About morning sickness, which is apparently all day sickness now.
Yes.
There's no way to avoid it, is there?
No, there is plenty of ways you can avoid it. First of all is to accept certain things are the natural processes in pregnancy.
Okay, doctor. My next question is, when does life begin?
That's such a good question, Nikita, because it's such a debatable issue. Just as the definition of death is always in controversy, so also the beginning of life is very debatable. But I think anybody who has reasonable thinking would know that when two cells unite, gametes unite, and from that gamete there is a quick proliferation of cells which has life to create a potential human being, is the moment of life. So if you would ask me, the minute there is fertilization, that's the beginning of life.
Okay, so you are not going to call it a clump of cells or a blob of tissues.
You ask a woman who really wants a baby, a person who's had a problem conceiving, a person who's going through fertility treatment, if she would ever be disrespectful to her pregnancy and call it a blob of tissue or a clump of cells. I think it's disrespectful to human life to call it a clump of cells.
Certainly. We've just heard that so much that I thought I should ask you.
No, I would think it would be disrespectful to human life to call the potential human being, an embryo, a fetus, an infant, a child, an adolescent, a clump of cells. So just because it's prenatal, you don't call it a clump of cells. You give it its appropriate title. It's a zygote, it's an embryo, it's an infant, it's a fetus, it's an infant. That's how you go.
Okay, speaking about an infant, when do you actually know, when do you actually hear the baby's first heartbeat?
Okay, the way we categorize it is, we categorize it as 8th week, before the 8th week, when it's considered an embryo.
Right.
Okay, and after the 8th week, the terminology is a fetus. Okay, so the heartbeat is usually heard somewhere between the 6th and 7th week. With very good ultrasound machines today, as early as the 6th or 7th week, you can pick up the fetal heart.
Oh, wow.
So it's that early that the fetal heart is picked up, and it's a racy and quick, fast fetal heart sound that you hear. So that's as early as the baby's heartbeat being heard. And by the 7th and 8th week, if you do not get the heartbeat, you are worried about the viability of the pregnancy.
Right. So doctor, in 29 years of your practice, has there ever come a situation where you had to choose between the mother's life or the baby's life? And if you have had such a situation, how do you take such a decision?
It is a question of the mother's life being sacrosanct in decisions like this. However, I think it's the intent this is important. You want to save both, but at the same time, the mother's life comes first. When it's a question where a woman develops very severe hypertension in pregnancy, say as early as the 25th or 26th week of pregnancy, and you know that there's no going forward without it being extremely risky to her life, one has to take that difficult call. Quite often babies are saved as early as 25 and 26 weeks. But say the same thing happened in what we would call a pre-viable pregnancy, somewhere around the 21st week or so of pregnancy. And you have a mother who's potentially got a life-threatening condition, and you have to save her come what may. You have to take that difficult decision. A woman who starts bleeding in pregnancy, which is life-threatening to her, no way would you sacrifice her life because it is pre-viable to the child. But those decisions to be made are few and far between. Quite often with today's modern medicine, you can take it to a gestational age which is safe for the mother, keeping her safe, safe for the baby, you take it to the point of viability, and with good neonatal ICUs, babies do very well, even under 1 kg birth weights, as early as about 26 weeks of gestation. So very rarely do we have to make that decision, the choice between the two, but in those rare circumstances, the mother's life is very, very important.
So you do have to communicate with the family before you take that decision, or it's
100%, 100%. That is a joint decision, and I've never had a family who's told me to go through a pregnancy and jeopardize the life of the mother.
right, of course. Okay, now I want to ask you, as a young growing woman myself, what is the difference between the morning after pill and the abortion pill?
Yes. They're so termed, you get confused as to one you're taking in the morning, both can be the morning after, what is the abortion pill, is it the same thing? No, the ingredients are completely different and the intent is different. The morning after pill is basically a contraceptive method.
Right.
There's no formation of the zygote yet. It's just changing the hormonal milieu of the uterine cavity and making it unreceptive to the implantation of the embryo. So it is a contraceptive method. Let me repeat again. The morning after pill is basically a contraceptive method. The abortion pill is based on the fact that there is a proven pregnancy and then you're attempting to abort the baby at an early stage from the mother's womb. So that's the huge difference between the two.
Okay, you've given us a lot of clarity. Okay, now that we are talking about pills, what are the side effects of birth control pills and how do they affect a woman's body?
Over the last 50 years, there's been a huge change in the composition of the hormonal pill. Margaret Sanger was the person who started the Planned Parenthood Association in America, and it was one of those organizations that funded both the research as well as the development and marketing of the pill. And I have to say, as a doctor, today I would use the pill more for non-contraceptive uses than contraceptive uses. The hormonal constituent of the pill, the progesterone as well as the estrogen, have been brought down to such a low level that they have several beneficial effects more than with the contraceptive effect. Yes, in the Western world, it is one of the preferred methods of contraception. It has a lot of beneficial effects, such as reduction in the risks of endometrial cancer, ovarian cancer. It also basically keeps away the unwanted side effect of women terminating pregnancies when they turn pregnant without using contraceptive methods. Having said that, let's go through what are the small side effects or the minor side effects and what are the major side effects. On beginning the pill, many women will go through a symptom of a bloated feeling, breast tenderness, a feeling of nausea when the pill is a little strong in its constituents, and they may not feel themselves. Some people are completely intolerant to the hormonal pill. Women might get an aggravation of the migraine headaches, and some women might go through slight spotting or different other small minor effects which are not life-threatening. The major life-threatening effects of the pill is a medical condition called thromboembolism, where the hormonal constituents make the body susceptible to forming blood clots in different areas. These blood clots, if they pull loose and get into your lung, it can cause you to have what we call a pulmonary embolism, which can be life-threatening. Sometimes these blood clots remain in the legs and then they cause different types of ulcerations, swelling, and what we call deep vein thrombosis. So these are the major life-threatening problems that you can get with the hormonal pill.
But in no way you are against them.
The hormonal pill?
Yes.
No, I'm an advocate for taking things which are appropriate for the given day and age. If a hormonal pill helps a young girl to reduce the hair growth from her face, which is making her feel very uncomfortable, if her menstrual cycle is so erratic that she gets periods after months on end, if her periods are so heavy where she requires to get blood transfusions and I have to make a choice to giving the hormonal pill, undoubtedly I would choose the hormonal pill rather than any other modality. So I'm definitely not against the hormonal pill.
Okay, that's great. That's good to know.